All right, hey Andrew. So thanks for coming and spending some time. I wanted to use this time to sort of summarize some of the things we worked on, we're building towards in your golf swing. So in terms of setup, everything looked really solid. Athletic, ready, everything kind of very good lines. One thing that I noticed when we played was sometimes your aiming is a little bit, it doesn't quite fit what you're trying to do. So there was a couple times I saw you aiming pretty far left, and then you'd hit a nice little draw, but it'd end up in the left desert, or sometimes aim got a little bit off some of the short irons into the greens. But all in all, setup looked really good. Now, the one thing we started to work on was this idea of, okay, this golf swing's happening on an arc, and you're sort of the middle of that arc. And so when we start to add independent wrist action or independent arm movements or independent leg and body movements, the independent movements create sort of dysfunction on our arc. So, that idea that Iron Byron is sort of a fixed axis, golf club in a vise sort of simple arc, when we do silly stuff in our golf swings, it just kind of disrupts that flow. So the first thing we looked at was, okay, well, how do we take it back a little bit differently? So we were quieting the hands quite a bit. We were trying to create some more width in the backswing with basically just less manipulation of the hands, because what I saw with you was the hands like to push down and get the club sort of really hinged and outside in the takeaway. And so what happened was the hands are pushing down quite a bit, kicking the club out and shut, and then from there it went from here sort of steep to laid off at the top of the backswing. And so what I wanted to look at was, okay, well, how does this backswing work and what's the geometry of it? So if this yellow line is the line that the golf ball is on, my golf club, the shaft of my golf club is going to trace this yellow line back to here to where it's parallel. Okay, so it's tracing from face on. The hands haven't really done a whole lot. Trace. Gets the club about right here. Okay, that first part is just tracing that yellow line. Then from there, what you'll notice is my hands are trying to pretty much stay straight down this line, this yellow line, but my body starts to pivot simultaneously with my hands trying to stay straight down this line. So what happens is the hand depth from setup to where my left arm's parallel to the ground, my hip turn is what gave my hands the depth. Okay, so now when my left arm's parallel to the ground, this shaft is pointing at this yellow line and my hands cover my right bicep. Because I didn't have any sort of manipulation, my arms are now with me. They match. They're going to sequence properly. Because what happens from here is the hands will push away to create width as I continue to turn. So this gets my left arm higher at the top of the backswing, or more on my shoulder plane. And then from there, you'll notice that as I move this left shoulder down and left, my hands start to come out or more in front of me. And so this is going to be important for you, because what I saw in you was the club gets out, laid off, and then it kind of drops behind you. It kind of just drops straight down. And part of that could be this left shoulder. If this left shoulder starts to raise, then the hands will drop. If this left shoulder goes down and left, the hands kick out. So for a good player, this is a really important concept, so that the hands can get back in front of you and then fire into impact. Otherwise, if the left shoulder raises, the hands drop underneath. Now I've got way too shallow of an angle of attack, and I've got to manipulate the bottom of the arc with my hands. So taking the club back more cleanly, less wrist action, just kind of all together. Then good pivot in the hips, gets the hands deep. Then as this left shoulder moves down in this direction, it starts to kick the hands back out in front, so those high blocks to the right will go away. Now, the feeling of this with an iron, it's okay to get into the ground a little bit, obviously, and it's okay to get more in front of the ball if you have loft. But if you don't have loft, so like a driver, what we worked on was you winding up with less hand action, just really wide, really big wind up, Tiger 2000, wide and wound up. Then from there, the feeling was that the club was gonna move wide coming down. So it's like I'm throwing the club head from the inside into impact. So I'm throwing the club head at the ball. Now, as soon as I get to the bottom of the arc, that throw is gonna start to recock. So the hands are gonna start to fold up, the wrists are gonna start to recock, and the elbows are gonna kind of recock too, because if I throw it really well from the top, but don't recock my wrist, then the forces are pulling me up and out of the shot. And what happens is, if the club gets thrown and not recocked, you lose the pressure points in the armpits, and it can't keep you in balance. So that's all I have for right now. Obviously, you did a great job with the chip shots. We did a lot with sort of, you know, using the bounce and playing around with all the different shaft setups and all the different lie angles, and then feeling as you eliminate any unnecessary independent movement, it just gets easier and easier to create the same arc, to create the same bottom. So continue to work with the short game shots, and we clean up the backswing a little bit and get the driver, the arms firing back in front of you with the driver. I see a lot of those far right misses going away, and you're going to be able to compress your irons better, but most importantly, you're going to be more and more consistent, so that day in and day out, you know what's going to show up. So I appreciate the time and the effort, so please feel free to reach out to me at any time. And thanks again, buddy. That was fun watching you birdie 16 at Stadium. Thanks.